Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Niamh Algar to talk all about the second season of HBO Max's Raised by Wolves. And I wanted to start by jumping back to your initial development and the way that you shaped this character, because when you first sent off an audition tape, you not only sent a scene of yourself, performing the scenes, but also a separate one of you boxing. And a lot of that came from the way that Ridley Scott very frequently builds his characters. And I was actually interested in how that then translated over to the way that you developed Sue as a character in the series, because even when there's instances where she's not necessarily in the midst of a physical altercation, there's something about the way that she carries herself and that survival instinct that she has that really stems off of that strength that it sounds like you were trying to also really demonstrate in sending that extra piece of video homework to him. So I was interested in how that shaped a lot of traits that you built into her.
Yeah, so I think I just completed the Virtues and Calm with Horses, and I had this like wild undercut, and my hair was like bleach blonde, and I was trying to get like just a general meeting with Kate Rowe James, who was the casting director, and my agent Ollie was like, she can see you now, just for a general chit chat. And Ollie, my agent, had known about the casting involved with Raised by Wolves and knew that was happening, but didn't want to, say anything to me because they were only seeing people for Mother, the character of Mother at the time. So I was coming out of the gym and I was like, oh crap, okay, yeah, no, I'll go and I'll go and meet Kate. And me and Kate were just sitting down in her office for like 20 minutes chatting, and she was like, Ollie was right. I think you are going to be right for this project. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay, I have this project, but I need to get tapes in by like tomorrow. Can you do that? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was actually flying the next day to start this project with Brian Cox to do. It was like a shoot called The Last Rite, and we were heading over to like Rathlin Island, which is this island off the coast of Northern Ireland, and I still hadn't packed. So I got home, I got sent over the audition sides, and I got sent the first episode to read. And I was like, okay, but Sue isn't in the first episode. So I was like, okay. But it was more so to just get an entire grasp of what the season was going to be about, what this series was going to be about. And I read it and I was like, holy moly, this is like I fell in love with Ridley Scott as a kid watching like Alien, and especially like Sigourney Weaver. She's this ultimate like badass. She's got like complete agency in her own story, but also we're not flagging that she's a strong female woman. She's doing the job in the story, and it's never kind of addressed. It's like everyone's kind of, what I loved about Ridley's stories is that women are always equal. They're not just there for like, they have agency within their own story. And that's what I think as a kid, I just always found really intriguing. So yeah, I got the sides and I was like, okay, right, I have to learn this really quickly. And I grabbed my housemate, Evan, and I had no basis of what the character was about because they hadn't started casting for that character yet. And because they needed to cast Mother, and there was a kind of like a casting criteria with that character is that she had to be really tall. And I'm like 5'8", and they wanted someone to be like nearly 6 foot. And I was like, well, I don't think I can reach to that. But so I was like, I'd love to read for the character of Sue. And so I did the tape. And because it was all I had for the character, just description was just in that scene of someone who's pretending to be someone else and also living with this, living with someone that she loves, but is quite like she's got a lot of things going on. She's struggling with faith, and she's also struggling with this like person that she doesn't know if she can trust anymore, but ultimately has to make this big sacrifice. So, and me being like a huge fan of Ridley, I was like, I love G.I. Jane, I love I love Alien. So I was like, there must be like a physical contribution that I can showcase to kind of help me get in this casting door and get my tape seen. So I was like, Evan, come down to the gym and we're just going to shoot some just like me working with one of the guys down there, you know, doing some boxing on the pads, and I'll just send that with it. It wasn't asked. I just kind of thought, if we can kind of show that like I have like a you know, a physical grounding in something, and it's, you know, it's like an extension of me in some way. Um, and so I sent that over, and I was in a really lucky position, because I don't think they actually saw anyone else for the character of Sue. So I kind of had this amazing kind of creative leeway to make her my own, really. And yeah, and then I got the call when I was on Rathlin Island with Brian Cox to say that yeah, that really wants to work with you. So I did about, I think I needed another tape, because the first tape they wanted it in like they wanted an RP accent. They were figuring out where each of the colonies were going to be from. So the first was like RP, and then the second time they were like, "Can you do it in an American accent?" So it was just those two tapes, and then so I never met him until I got to South Africa, which was about 3 months later. And yeah, and and when I met him on set, and at the time I was like covered in all like these gauzes that the characters just, it was the first scene I had to shoot was the scene where she's just had all like the plastic surgery done. So it was very weird to meet Ridley Scott and have a mask of all like these surgical gauzes on your face, and you're there going like, "Hello, sir, Ridley Scott. I'm, you know, obviously a big fan of you." And I'm very excited. And he's just, yeah, he was just like, "Look, I love your tape. Let's, you know, Sue's yours. Just do what you want to do." And what I love about him is that he literally lets the actors just play. He loves that. He loves not, you know, over rehearsing a scene. He'll go through, you know, the blocking of it, but he won't like overwork the scenes. It's like he loves that idea of spontaneity and finding something very organic in the moment. And, you know, he shoots on multiple cameras, so, you know, you're shooting the mid shot and the wide and the close kind of within, you know, one or two takes, and then he moves, you know, like he films very quickly. And, you know, he trusts what I love about him is that he trusts his casting directors, and he trusts that the people that they've assembled are right for the role. And I can't look at any of the cast and think anyone else could play any of those roles. Like, you just see them, and you just, you know, and it was a very family feeling on that set, because, you know, we are all the way over in South Africa, away from our family, so we did very much bond as a family while we were out there. And so yeah, we're all very close. But yeah, that to work with him and just see to be on that scale of project, that was a very surreal moment.
And I love the
Yeah.
note that one single note that he gave you in that moment when you met him, you know, when she's got all of the bandages on her face, and that he just gave you a direction about when she sees herself, she's really seeing a reflection of, you know, it's all of her worst nightmares
Yeah.
reflected back on her. And I thought that was
Yeah.
fascinating, because it's such a concise thing that really captures so much for your character. And so when he was
Yeah.
directing the first two episodes, did you find that a lot of your interactions, because of what you were just saying about the trust that he places in you with this character, were just kind of very small and very concise details like that?
Yeah. Like, he doesn't over talk, and he keeps it simple. Um and he doesn't, I suppose he doesn't confuse the actor with too much information. And I suppose when you have very clear, concise notes, that's kind of what you need to be focusing in that moment. But yeah, when he told me that, I was like, and I take, you know, and we shot it all as one continuous take. And then I just, like, as the character, just burst out crying, because, you know, it was the idea of like looking in the mirror and seeing something that you hate, and you're effectively leaving behind your identity and becoming something else. But also, when you look in the scheme of things, it's the idea that if she doesn't do this, she's going to die. And so yeah, we shot it once, and then we moved on. So we did it once, one take, and yeah, that was on my very first day. So yeah, I was like, okay, And what was really cool was that I kind of had to sign on to the project thinking that the character was meant to die in season one. And so we kind of shot those first couple of scenes, and then uh, Aaron, the creator, and Ridley were like, "We don't want to kill your character off." So I was like, oh, "Okay, this is kind of like a really nice stamp of approval that we're doing okay."
And to the point that you were just making about the necessity for her as a character, that if she doesn't do that, that's her life is literally on the line with absorbing herself into someone else's identity, even if it is the antithesis of everything that she believes in. And so you've gotten the opportunity, even going further into season two, to really explore these different spaces of her. Who is she when she's completely absorbing herself into someone else's identity, and she can't let a single crack show, because if people find out, then she could potentially be killed. The quiet moments where we got to see kind of like the in between, where she could kind of allow a little bit of herself to the surface, but it was still kind of this middle ground. And now going into
Yeah,
the beginning of season two, it's, who is she now that she's been able to shed that false identity and kind of
exactly.
return to herself, but also a different version? And so, how have you kind of always looked at the different spaces that you get to play this character, but also what the threads are that kind of consistently carry between, even when she's passing herself off as someone else?
Oh, you totally nailed it there. That's great. Yeah, yeah, it is. For me, for Sue, it was always figuring out who the heck she was. Who is she? And it's not just me trying to find that out as the character. It's like Sue is actually searching for her identity. And then in this season, it's someone we haven't seen before. This is a very different Sue than we got to see in season one, which I was really excited by, because as you said, in season one, it's like she's trying not to show those cracks. And now in season two, it's like, oh, those cracks are going to open up, and we're going to see someone else inside. And um, she's put into very, very dark places, and that causes her to go into a very kind of dark headspace for the character. So she is in this season, we start with her trying to find purpose in the atheist colony. These are the people that she betrayed, and they only see her as this absolute traitor. So she's trying to find her role amongst the colony, and so she's constantly being judged. And so, and I think when you are kind of pegged as being the bad guy, you kind of begin to act like the bad guy, where you don't want to play by their rules. And she's very much not trying to play by their rules. But deep down, this is a character that was kind of put into the position of being a mother to someone, and she was being a mother to Paul. And now that he knows her true identity, she still has an incredible bond with him. And so there's like, there's what I love about it is like there's so much going on in the show. And so you get to kind of show these different threads of the character kind of through, 8 episodes. And so, you see bits of her, trying to investigate where the source of this voice that, tore Marcus away from her and caused Paul to shoot her. She's got purpose now in this season. She's trying to figure out what the voice means. And, what I noticed is that from looking at season one, like when you look at it from the outside after you do the work and you look at it, you're like, she is kind of like the eyes of the audience, because she's the one who's like asking the questions the audience wants answered. And she's very much that kind of like the straight character. And she definitely begins to investigate that in this season. And this Paul's kind of life has been jeopardized, and she's struggling to like save his life. And while that's all being kind of turmoil, she's going into these kind of dark and interesting places psychologically in her head. Because what I loved about what Ridley said is like, she's a soldier, she's someone she's mentally strong, she's physically strong. Like I did a lot of like physical training this season, just to kind of get back into that idea of like, I suppose is like acting the role of like a soldier, and having that structure, and getting up early, going to the gym, and then And I don't know, I think there's like, when you feel physically strong, it like mentally prepares you for the day. And so, yeah, it's season two is like, yeah, Sue's been taken up a notch.
I mean, it sounds like working on the show is kind of an incredible boot camp, and this is the longest that you've spent with a single character on a project,
Mm,
going through 2 seasons of this now. And it sounds like shoots so generally, the first season I think was about 8 or 9 months of production on everything. And
yeah.
so actually kind of going beyond just physically what that requires from you in terms of shooting days, the training that you're doing, what's kind of the mental stamina that you have to build for yourself to be able to step into that and really get everything that you need within the character and within all the layers every single day for that amount of time.
It's a good question. It's just having the time in advance to be prepared. I remember like Stephen Graham saying it is like, how you make something look like how you make something look easy is if you spend 3 hours a night before figuring out how many ways to do it wrong until you figure out how, what is potentially the right choices. So you need to have those choices in your back pocket, so then on the day it makes it just look seamless. And so we got out there, I think it was in January of last year, and then we had like, I think it was about 8 weeks prep, and that was just, it was an amazing production team. The production design this season is just, it's otherworldly, literally. So we got a chance to be on the set and see them and kind of mechanically work out how you were going to navigate this whole new world. And like, my character deals with a lot of props, so I had a load of sessions with like the prop masters and the production designers to just get comfortable with those, I suppose, the props that the character is going to be dealing with. And Kate Karen, who's the production or the costume designer this season, she's, because we're on a different part of the planet, it's like everything looks different, but also like how your costume just informs how the character has like developed as well. It's just like that whole breakdown. And so, yeah, it's like, it's weird. I'd never re-explored a character before, and it's really nice to have also that, like, you've kind of like, season one is kind of like her backstory, and now this is like her telling her story in season two. But yeah, it's just being prepared as possible, so that when you can show up on the day and you just get the opportunity to do that, and then having that space in the evening to just not be the character and just to separate yourself from it, because it is such a long shoot that you need that time away, and you need that distance, because if you're just in it all the time, it's very hard to get clarity in what you feel like, if you're doing right or doing wrong. And it's I don't know, it can sometimes become cyclical, in the sense that you begin to doubt your capability, or so it's really important to have those downtimes, and just to step away from it. And then when you go back into it, you just enjoy it twice as much. It's like, it's, too much of anything isn't always good for you. So you just, balance is key. And that's so, I talk like I practice that all the time, but it's like, it's really important. It's just, yeah, I need to take more of my own advice more time. Yeah.
No, but you bring up that idea of balance, and you've talked a little bit in the past about how one of the early things in your career that was instilled in you was that space of not always looking externally for validation, and not always looking to your career to fulfill everything in yourself, because then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to end up in a very one-dimensional space. And so what was that trajectory for you of kind of learning that early on, and then trying to put that into practice in each project that you do, because you're absorbing yourself so much, particularly for a project like this where you're shooting for several months, you're on location, you're away from everybody else. And so how do you make sure that you maintain that space of, keeping the validation within yourself, and keeping that balance outside of a project?
That's a golden question. So that is like classic thing of being kind to yourself. Um, and yeah, when you're not, it's important to take, important to take the praise and to take the criticism in equal measure. And um, I know it's like, actors talk about this all the time of being present, but it's not just being present and listening. It's also just like being present outside of work, so that you're not constantly kind of thinking about the job that you've just done, or thinking about something else that you should be on, or where I should be, or I should be spending more time with them. And I think it's just allowing yourself to enjoy it. I think it's just, you just need to enjoy the job. And if you enjoy the job, I think I don't know how I'm trying to say this, but being kind to yourself, but also acknowledging when you have done the work, and you have that, even if you have an off day, if you have prepped in advance, that even that day when you didn't feel like it didn't go to plan, that you still had the kind of the basis and the training and the back, that homework done in advance, that it is going to show. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes when you think like a scene hasn't gone how you planned, it's always like, I look back at it and go, oh gosh, that's actually my favorite scene in the whole series. And that was the day when all things were going wrong. So sometimes when you think something, you've absolutely smashed it or nailed it, as people say, those are the ones that actually don't stand out at the end of the day. Yeah, it's interesting. It is. It's I don't know. It's something I'm learning. I'm putting in my diary to do this year, is just to, I suppose, let go of a lot of self-criticism, and just enjoy being present for the job, and not try and because it's tricky as an actor. You can't, you're kind of like the controls that you have, like you're very much you're in the hands of someone else, and but there's also something quite freeing about giving over and playing a character, because it's not you to a degree, but these aren't your words. You're making them your words, so there's a freedom in that. And I think go with that freedom of going, this isn't my dialogue, so I can be completely present, because this character isn't thinking about the 10 other things that they're meant to be doing, or the problems that you as as Niamh have to go home now and do this. It's like, oh yeah, I can just give in to being this person, and it's play. It's like, why we compare it to like play is like playing games, and like acting is all about play. And if you limit yourself and put in too many rules, or it doesn't become play, it becomes a task and a work. And that's, I think, that kills creativity, and it kills communication. And it's all about just listening to people. It's like half of acting is just listening and then responding.
I really love all of that. And jumping back to the show, because you were talking about Sue's relationship with Paul and parenthood for her, and especially because in shooting season 1, they're still writing the scripts. You didn't have the entire arc for your character at the beginning, but we got to learn so much towards the end about, her journey and trying to become a parent, the miscarriage that she'd gone through, the trauma that she carries because of that, and knowing that she can't have children, and then stepping into season 2, where she's essentially at the beginning being rejected by Paul, by her child, and someone that she sees herself as a mother to. What was kind of the emotional landscape that you wanted to enter this season in, with kind of at this point knowing everything that she's carrying from her past and going through that space of rejection with her child?
Yeah, I suppose she is someone who has been rejected by Paul, and she's been rejected by Marcus. So there's a lot of rejection. And so she's kind of built up this, she's very vulnerable, but she's also built up this kind of wall, and, isolates herself. So it was very much like a lot of Sue's stuff this season is very much her by herself. And by doing that, you begin to kind of read into what like the inner workings of what it is that's psychologically going on inside her head. And so I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it's like, actually Paul, speaking of Paul, who's played by Felix Jameson. He's just an absolute dream to work with. Like a lot of my stuff this season is with Felix, and like I learned so much with that kid. He's like the smartest 12-year-old I've ever come across. And myself and him have this really great relationship, you know. So I think it's just that you get to push one another as actors in those scenes. And you know, he's a terrific little actor. He's just like he's a little movie star. Yeah.
He is. And did all of those details inform a lot of the dynamics that you wanted to create in this season, particularly because, like you said, you know, this is Sue kind of stepping out away from all of the people and the crutches that she's had around her in her relationship with Mother, played by Amanda so brilliantly, because, you know, they've now reached a point where there was animosity and distance, and it was kind of, you know, I'm with the group that sees you as the enemy and we're coming after you. And now, having gone through everything at the end of season one, you know, they've discovered this real kinship and connection with one another, which is really beautiful to
Yeah.
watch on screen.
Yeah, well, that's like kind of it's reflective of real life. Like me and Amanda, she's like the warmest person. She is a mother in herself. But yeah, it's interesting. You get to like flip that around, and like it's interesting because you find yourself in those scenes where you catch yourself going, "Oh wait, Sue's talking to an android," but she doesn't. She's beginning to forget that. She's beginning to see her more as human because she's beginning to see these human emotions. And that for Sue is very incredibly intriguing because that's something that she's she's lost along the way. Like Sue has lost, she's kind of numbed herself to any of these kind of emotions that she couldn't have on display because of the role she has as this soldier that's meant to be, you know, this fighting machine, and has kind of gone to a place where she's killed this boy's parents in order to survive, and it's a very selfish act. And now it's like everything that she's kind of done in her past beginning to catch back up with her, and she's beginning to judge what like her past actions, and so that's like that trauma is kind of bubbling to the surface. And so she needs someone on this planet to like kind of confide in, and I suppose Mother is the closest thing that she has to a friend.
And because also it gives us the opportunity to now see Sue interacting with, you know, Mother and with other characters that were part of the narrative throughout the first season, but didn't necessarily cross paths with your character. I actually wanted to ask about that in relation to the way that you worked with Shane Meadows, because, you know, he really loves doing workshops and really kind of that idea of rehearsing everything but the scene that you're filming, so that you develop this muscle where you kind of know exactly how your character is going to respond with any situation that they're thrown into. And I was interested if that's kind of developed a certain skill set for you, or tools that you still lean into, so that when you're working on a show like this and suddenly you're stepping into really intimate scenes with a character like Mother, that you just already have that instinct of, well, I know how Sue's going to respond to this situation because I've already thought about, you know, all these different scenarios and all these different potential spaces that she could end up in.
Yeah, it was interesting on the virtues because, you know, as you said, Shane works in a way where he workshops beforehand, and that's how he's figuring out the story and the narrative, and who, you know, who we're going to follow. And so that was like one of my first kind of big jobs, and it gave me that grounding of going, not just looking at a script, but just looking idly at or singularly at your character and going, that's all I'm focusing on. You have to, well, I felt this is my approach to it, but it's like you look at it and go, well, what if that character did bump into that person? How would they react? And in those early workshops with Shane, when we were, you know, workshopping the virtues, there was, you know, I had scenes with like, I had scenes like we just tried out every scenes with all the other characters, and by doing that, you're just asking yourself more questions as the character, and you're being challenged, and so you need to like challenge them as much as the character, so that, you know, because things always change on set, locations change, script changes, and so that you are prepared to think, like, you know, your character might have been scared of the water at one point, and now it's like, actually we're actually going to shoot this on a boat, take away the whole, you know, fear of water, and you're like, okay, I need to roll with this. So, you know, it's the idea of like committing to certain choices but not taking that as gospel, and you have to be open to change. And Michael Smiley, taught me that, it's all about embracing and committing. It's like, embrace the changes, but commit to the moment. And, if you kind of half attempt something, it just looks like you're not, you can sense that, in a performance. So it's like, right, you just have to go for it. And if you get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. We're not like saving lives. We're telling stories.
I think that's so wonderful, and especially in relation to working on a show like this, where there are so many details flying at you. And I've been so impressed by watching your performance so far, and the first couple of episodes of the second season are fantastic. So I can't wait to see where we go on this journey with you the rest of season 2. Thank you so much, Niamh.
Just wait and see. It's wild. It is wild.